Welcome back to On the Road podcast with myself, Florence Musundwa, the convener of the Road Freight SME Summit. The podcast is brought to you by FNB and West Bank. Remember, the countdown has started to our annual conference, which is the Road Freight SME Summit, taking place on the 16th and 17th of October. Make sure that you book your seat now before they run out. I really encourage you to book your seat, and I look forward to meeting you. Today's conversation is one that is a hot topic in this industry. It's about moving from road to rail. And the question is it a threat or an opportunity for SME truck owners, that one that has 5 trucks, 3 trucks? What does it mean to you? What does this drive and structural reforms, these big words that we're hearing, and the turnover recovery of Transnet mean to small and medium enterprises in the space? And that's what we'll be having a conversation with. I have the pleasures of having a leading voice in this industry, a man that's been doing quite a lot for the past 10 years in the space and making sure that South Africa is moving forward in very, very difficult times and in this transition that we are in transport. And it's Mr. Lord. How are you, sir?
Very well, thanks yourself, Florence.
Thank you so much. Let me first thank you for making time to come sit on my gray couch with me and just going to share insights with us about this industry and educating the viewers of the podcast and the small and medium enterprises within the space. Thank you.
Absolute pleasure. I hope I can do that intro justice.
No, I'm sure you will. Before we get into the conversation, just tell everybody what you've been up to in the past 10 years. What are you doing, and the different businesses that you're running in the space?
Okay. So for the last 10 years, have been actively focused on developing and operationalizing the Cape Ridge Inland Port. What that is basically where road and rail can interface with each other. And so while we have this road to rail discussion, there's not many places where road can actually move to rail. And so one of these areas is inland ports. So we are designing and developing and operating the first private sector inland port in the country, which has come with a lot of challenges, a lot of learnings, and a long journey that we've had with Transnet to date. So part of the role has been to establish the various operating entities required in order to make an inland port work, and specifically there are 3 of them, which is the railroad interface, which is actually the rail terminal, the truck staging operation in which to coordinate trucks arriving into the area so you don't have congestion, and the last one is the container depot, which is where containers are then triangulated. So you've got empty and full containers, and so you've got the truck getting triangulated, you've got the train getting triangulated, and you've got containers getting triangulated as the 3 areas that have to converge. So that's been largely my role. Then recently, in the last 2.5, 3 years, have got a lot of the other inland port developers together, and we have created an association called the Multimodal Inland Port Association, or MIPA. And today I'm sitting here as chairman of MIPA in that capacity, and so talking on behalf of a whole bunch of inland ports and not necessarily just the Cape Ridge one. So interesting journey. What we just by way of background, it was very difficult project in the beginning, especially in the first sort of 7 to 8 years, when it was considered significant headwinds by having to rely on Transnet-related risk, because you're sort of relying on trains, and trains are the purview of Transnet in totality. With the changing of the government's philosophy and this privatization, or the opening up of the logistics network to private sector, it is now in the process of allowing private sector operators to run trains on the network, which means that we don't have full Transnet risk. We've got train operator risk, which is very exciting for us, because that brings private sector risk as opposed to public sector risk. And so what we have found, to become an overnight success takes 10 years of hard work. And it feels like we're in that little place at the moment.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I can attest, it's probably not been an easy journey at all. Give us context to what led you to develop the solution. You spoke about the heavily reliance on Transnet over the years, and where we are now with private sector being given the opportunity to get into the space. Just give us context as to what has happened, and how did we get to where we are now?
Okay, in order to answer...
And the opportunities that you are presenting.
Okay, so in order to answer that fully or comprehensively, let's take a little step back in history and sort of discuss at a very high and quick level sort of the trajectory of our supply chain. So 30 to 35 years ago, I forget the timing, you had to move things via Gauteng and Durban, at that stage called the Vaal, via train. There was no option to do it via trucks. That was legislated. That legislation in the dawn of the new democracy, or just before, got changed and said, well, instead of forcing everyone to go on rail, well, you can now choose. And truck comes with one container, one truck, where the driver is. It's a lot more flexible, where they are, whereas 50 trucks, which is a train, all moving together, make it a lot more complex. And so with this deregulation, and then also the troubles that had beset Transnet. And the reason why there's troubles that beset Transnet is twofold. There's one, they had an unfunded mandate. And the unfunded mandate is to be good for the country and be very at the forefront of BE and black economic upliftment, and as well as greening projects and all that. However, never given the budget to fund these things. So you must run as a business, yet fund all the government's type activities. That was the one issue. And the second issue was, because of the legislation in the past, there was significantly more rail than there should have been. To run it efficiently and effectively as the backbone of a logistics supply chain, you can't have rail everywhere. You can't have rail to your fingertips.
Yes.
Rail needs to act as the backbone in a human body, between the head and sort of the tail, for lack of a better word, and back again. And if you get that right, then you start getting efficiencies.
Like a spinal cord, right?
Exactly, like a spinal cord on the body. So what happened is we moved from a very regulated space into a totally unregulated space. At the same time, it was the dawn of democracy in the country, New South Africa, lots of opportunities, lots of excitement. And one of the low-hanging fruits at that stage was to go into trucking, transporting. You can own it at that relatively cheap, at R1 million or R2 million a horse and trailer. All of a sudden, you're a transporter. Whereas if you do any sort of manufacturing or something, you often have to have a building or something, which comes at a lot greater cost. So the barriers to entry were quite small. So that was great when we had a limited amount of cargo. However, as cargo have increased and we've sort of outsourced a lot of our manufacturing to China or the Far East, we now have to move things a lot more. And especially when you start talking about Checkers 60/60, and there's even more movements happening. And so all of a sudden, we've got all of these trucks trying to compete in the same roads with all this cargo volume, and all of a sudden they're getting each other's way. And so now we have this huge congestion. So what that has meant is that it's a bit like running a race, and you're only allowed to run on one leg. So you must hop around. Rail has not fulfilled its obligation or its role, its natural role, its economically role, and that has caused us to be where we are. So that construct or concept is now understood and very clearly by Department of Transport, and specifically Barbara Creasy and her team, and they have now actively gone to change that. And actively changing that is by allowing private sector to now manage for long periods, 25 to 50 years, concessions inside the port itself. Previously Transnet only, but also now able to run private sector trains on the government's network. On Transnet network. So a bit like a SANRail network. The roads. Every car can run on it. It's not dependent on the road. However, that's the enabler. So that's what needs to happen on this front. So what's now happened is we see this as a massive rail renaissance.
Yes.
What was previously only allowed to be held by the public sector is now open to the private sector. So the opportunities that come when you have a complete change in the status quo are vast. And you specifically asked me, or sort of the topic of the conversation, is it a good thing or a bad thing for SMEs? And to me, the answer is both. And let me talk at a high level about that, and then we'll drill into it. Sort of on a negative is, well, change is scary. I've got a business and it's doing okay. If you're in trucks, you're not normally doing okay because of the way the system is set up at the moment. Is what the clients are prepared to pay and what you have to sell your service at is not economical or sustainable.
Yeah.
Especially if you're now having to comply with government regulations of drive times, of sanitary, of etc. And so what we're finding is the fleet itself and the quality of drivers are getting diminished at such a rate in order to bring cheaper service and be able to make a margin that we're inefficient. So that's the negative bits, is you're potentially going out of business because you're not nimble. However, if you are nimble, and this is where the entrepreneurs are often, not often, always a lot bigger than the big guys, is that if the direction has now changed, well, what can we now do to plug into this change direction? And the simple examples is, well, guys, if you're running trucks at the moment, why don't you augment some of your truck trips with train trips? You still bill your client for the complete journey, and instead you just outsource a portion of your journey, especially sort of in the Cater Ridge example between Cater Ridge and City Deep. Put that via train. There's a cost, which means you can still use your single horse if you're a one-horse operator, and now augment your service and get a higher revenue. Sure, you've got higher costs because it's going out, but you don't have the risk of having another truck, and you're not having the same inefficiencies to collect in the port, which is currently happening. The last benefit of that is your truck and driver sleeps at home. This is very important. We live in a volatile country. Yep. We've heard about the stuff that happens at Mooi River, at Heidelberg, etc. That if your truck is only doing 50 or 100K trips and dropping off, it always sleeps at night, which is good for the family unit, good for your assets, and good for your driver and employees. So I've given you only two examples. But so, yeah.
And I want us just to take it slightly back. You mentioned that part of the solution is addressing that small and medium enterprises do not have to now get stuck at the ports and deal with the congestion and potential crime that could possibly happen, or their truck driver not getting back home on time, and the amount of money that they are losing within that delay in the congestion. And your alternative is that if they come on your side, that is being cut off, or that is being addressed, so to say.
Yes.
Are they saving money? Will they save money?
Okay, so let me answer that, and once again step a little bit further back, is that the international practice is that the problem that we have at the Durban port is not new. The ports have grown and the cities have grown, and they compete for scarce landside resources. And so a common problem exists with ever-increasing boats arrive at the port. We now have to evacuate and bring in ever-increasing cargo sizes. How do we do this? International best practice is, well, we have back of port solutions, which means we mass evacuate the congested Durban port area to a back of port facility. Cater Ridge is one of them, already earmarked in the government gazette, as well as through Parliament. Dubai Trade Port is another one. And the last one is the old airport, the old Durban airport. So these have been designated already. The cargo arrives and get pushed there via train. And that is where you now have the collection and the extra congestion now coming along at those 3 satellite nodes instead of all of them at the Durban port. So 100% the systematic nature of what we're doing brings more efficiency to the system. However, there is a cost of this efficiency getting built into the system. And one of the biggest issues we've got at the moment, in the fact that legislation hasn't caught up, or the port operating methodology hasn't caught up, is the fact that the current clients collecting from Cater Ridge, who are part of the solution, not going past Cater Ridge from Gauteng into Durban CBD, into the port area, congesting on the way in and congesting on the way out, they have to pay a premium to collect from Cater Ridge because of the rail leg and the handling leg there. Yet they are part of the solution. So I've got children, and when my child's naughty, I have to discipline them, and when they're good, I reward them. We are currently rewarding bad behavior, and we're penalizing good behavior. What do we expect our supply chain to do? You play the game. And if the ref's not blowing that, you continue doing it.
But why is it taking us so long?
South Africa, we're not very good at we're good at coming up with systems. We're not good at being part of a system. Remember,
Explain that, because I'm just thinking with everything that you're saying, you've highlighted the challenges and what now is being presented as the solution, and what people ought now to think about, and them being part of the solution and also optimizing opportunities for them to stay in business.
Yes.
I'm also asking myself, why has it taken so long? Because if this happened 5-10 years ago, I'm sure there would have been great adoption already, and we will not be finding ourselves where we are with an economy that is struggling and transport infrastructure that is very poor. Why have we taken so long?
I think the reason why it's taken so long is, one is, it's hard for us as South Africans to reach consensus and agreement about what a new system should be or what the new way is. It's easier for the existing way just to stay. And so that's what's happened, is we've also expected Transnet to drive what the Department of Transport, the national government, historically should have been driving, but it's sort of devolved or put onto Transnet.
To do.
And
So you're saying Transnet was heavily burdened?
Heavily burdened with roles and responsibilities that wasn't its. It's a bit like saying to the best player, Ronaldo or Messi, the best player, cool, on this game, you're also the ref. You can't ref a game you're playing in, guys.
So, within it, yes.
And so these are the issues. Turkeys don't vote for Christmas. And this is some of the issues that we've had in that, excuse me, is that it takes us, we have to agree on the new way the port system is going to operate. This was agreed when I first came into Caterridge and heard about it 12 years ago. Just to give you an example, I came down to build a logistics park next to this Caterridge inland port. That was my role.
Yeah.
And the more I did my due diligence to find out, great, when's it starting? Who's about to build it? It became very clear that this was a good idea, an intention. It had been put forward in many studies, but there was nothing actually done except speaking about it. Unfortunately, you have to walk the walk. You have to do the studies, you have to do it, and it's a multi-partied project. And that's the difficulty, is it was just one entity, you can push it through. However, I liken it to the fact that an inland port is like, it needs to act as a conductor of a symphony. All of these individual players, or the individual people, or the individual instruments, they own those.
Yeah.
However, the conductor is getting them to play a harmony together. He doesn't own those. He doesn't control those. However, they're saying, I want to be part of your conducting because it works. And that's what an inland port, or a construct of an inland port, is.
Should to be.
Historically, or in other countries, what's happened is government has always led it because they can legislate.
Yes.
Private sector can't legislate. So it's been very difficult for us in South Africa from a private sector perspective, because you're trying to create something with carrots.
Yes.
As opposed to saying, guys, if you step out of line, there's going to be some teeth here. There are going to be consequences.
Yes.
You can't do that to fellow private sector guys. And so that's been part of the difficulty and journey. But it's never been done in this country in the private sector before. And so there's a lot of learnings. I know many ways not to do it.
No, I can only imagine. Mr. Lord, there are many SMEs that have heavily invested in their fleet, and whether is it long haul or short distance, whatever the truck that they require. And now, with what you have just spoken about, one has to reconfigure and relook at the investment that they have made in their business by increasing their fleet, because there used to be huge demand for trucks. What should they do now with what is going to be or started being implemented around the ports and around the solutions that you've just spoken about?
Okay. So I think the first thing is you have to be real with regards to the sustainability of your business in the current state. So a lot of people compare theoretical basis. Actually take a deep look at your transporter with 1 truck, 5 trucks, 15 trucks and go, am I making money on a monthly basis? Am I paying the service providers correctly on a monthly basis? Is my truck legal? Past is it sustainable? Do I pass
Is
all
this
that muster?
feasible for me to do?
Yes, and not a short term. Yes, I can not do any maintenance. I can pay my guys pittance, whatever the case is, and milk it. That is a business strategy, but not a sustainable one. So first is have a look at whether you believe your current business is sustainable, because I believe a lot of it is not. And it helps you in your mindset if you realize that that's not an option anymore.
And I'd like you to get into why you think it's not.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So let's drill down, and we'll keep exploring. So at the moment, unfortunately, the competition in trucking is very, very high. The barriers to entry, like we spoke, is very, very low. And there are many trucks sitting idle, which means either you can have a truck sitting idle and making no contribution to fixed costs, or you can actually sell your service below cost.
Yes.
Because it's zero in, or at least I get something in to offset against the cost. And unfortunately, in my view, that's a lot of what's happening at the moment, and that's not a sustainable practice. When you have the big transporters going, we will not do these certain legs, and we'll rather outsource it, even though they've got the trucks, etc., because we can't do it at the price that this third-party service provider can, there's a little bit of trouble in the waters. And so that's the rationale behind, especially if you're starting to do the port movements.
Yes.
Highly competitive, big volumes, known business. However, it's very fraught with risk. The booking system, you can either be up or down on that. And so what I'm seeing is huge amounts of costs that aren't necessarily recorded or thought about. And you only see the revenue and the costs you actually see. So just have a look at all of it. Because once you've done that, then you can go, right, guys, the trajectory that we're on isn't right anyway, even if the status quo remains.
True.
How are we now? And we're entrepreneurs, so we have to be more nimble. That's our best asset, is that you're more nimble.
You can be very agile.
That's it, agile. And go, right, if this backbone is now being built, and if the backbone is going to work the way we've discussed it now, with rail between point A and point B and back again, I would know that every single train journey needs 2 truck journeys. A train does not go into the final destination either side. There's always a truck or some other type of apparatus taking it the last mile.
Yes.
What people refer to as the last mile.
Yes, and what a lot of people are saying, there's going to be a lot of opportunities at that part.
That part. So instead of going, no, I want one contract line haul with my truck doing one trip up to Joburg in the day and one at night or one back at the next day, go, right, it's a little bit more work. But instead, I've got 5 or 10 trips now during the day for that same truck in the Joburg area around the depot. Like I said, and I mentioned earlier in the podcast, that this is then your truck sleeps at home, the driver sleeps at home, and you've got security of asset. So then you start looking, well, guys, currently if I've got 10 trucks and I've got 10 units of turnover, if I now augment rail, I can still keep my 10 units, or maybe I go down to 9 units. Let's say I lose some with this long haul, 9 units. But hold on, I can add back the sort of 5 or 6 or 10 that the train's adding, and I sell that service. And so my big drive to the transporter, the truck owners, think about yourself as a transporter.
Yes.
You need to transport cargo for a fee. How that transports, you now have more tools at your disposal in which to do the job. You at least check it out. At least see if we can do it more cost effectively, more risk effectively. And sort of the latest podcast that has just been put out on my LinkedIn profile talks to the shock absorber in the supply chain.
Yeah.
At the moment, the Durban Port's the shock absorber, and your poor client, the poor trucking SMMEs, trucks sitting there. So they are wearing the full burden of this inefficient system. And so any efficiency to the system gets their wheels turning. And if a trucker, the wheels aren't turning, we ain't earning, is a good adage. And that would be, I've given you high-level examples. But then as soon as you have those examples, you have, well, guys, all of these guys need services. In and around where I've got the truck staging at the moment, it's amazing how many food outlets have popped up organically from the various community members now wanting to do traditional food into these guys. And they want this service. And then the next service comes along, well, tire repairs is required. Cool, well, you need a little facility to do that. And so the economic value add of this backbone now being created via rail allows a lot of opportunity, but you need to be nimble. Nothing's going to be handed to you.
And what I'm hearing you say is it's very important for the SME truckers or even the big guys to actually step back and think about the heavy costs that they've been carrying around, the inefficiency of the transport. I don't know whether you call it, it's not a roadmap or the logistics sector. around the ports. And I think a lot of people are not really aware of that. They've been carrying quite heavy costs.
Yes.
And if they can now start sitting back and saying, how do I relieve myself from this?
Yes.
And not carry these inefficiencies and go explore ways that are more efficient.
Yes.
And all I'm focusing on now is providing value add to my client.
Yes.
And what more can I do in that space? If one is not going to think about it that way, what is the threat?
Well, okay, so the threat is that you don't have a business to go in anymore because the drivers won't work for you anymore at the rates you give them, or alternatively your truck stops working and you actually have to replace it now. That then comes at a huge cost, and so you're permanently running hand to mouth, and all you need is one stumble, one trip up, and you're out of business in that sort of model. And so that would be the biggest risk: is that, guys, you're not going to be around. And that the whole point of every business is to be around and making money, etc., for everyone as they go. So that would be my the biggest takeout. And just the way they need to look at this, and being a chartered accountant by background and having looked at balance sheets and income statements, just have a look at your cash position at the start of the month and at the end of the month. That's the litmus test. Is more going out than is coming in.
Coming in, yeah.
Because sure, but you need to do this
over
over 12 months.
But we can be delusional as entrepreneurs.
Of course, we always drink our own Kool-Aid first. Yeah.
Can be very delusional. And I like that you said that is the litmus test, but I'm always thinking about how delusional sometimes you can think like these numbers miraculously are going to change because you're going to find a new client and you're going to up your volumes and, your fleet is going to still be on the road and things like that, but you're not taking into consideration the heavy costs that you keep on bearing.
Yes.
Based on the inefficiencies in the space.
Can I just add something in there? Sorry, before you go. So on that, what I've found very, very interesting and helps me exactly not to believe your own marketing and sort of, getting caught up, the hype in the moment is, there's a guy, I'm going to forget his name now in the middle of the interview. But basically he used to do a high, low and low roads and think like a fox. I forget what Clem Santa is his name. And there used to be discussions about how will we know whether we're on the high road or the low road. And historically this was done for companies or South Africa, especially coming into the elections in 94, Excuse me. And so what you need to look for red flags or green flags. If you're seeing red flags, that means that your business is heading in the wrong direction. And those flags are whatever you need them to be. Maybe not enough turnover, maybe not cash in bank at the end, maybe staff leaving, whatever your red flags are. But then you also need to have green flags for yourself. So if I'm seeing these things...
In this industry, we've normalized red flags. And...
TIA. This is Africa.
Yes. We've normalized red flags in the transport sector, and hence the inefficiencies that we've seen. So somebody in the industry, when you talk about congestion, it's like it's normal.
Standard.
It's standard. You talk about the wear and tear of it's standard. This is how much money you will spend, it's all right now. You can spend 5 days waiting for, at the port. It's okay.
Yep.
And you were saying that, but to somebody in their mind, this has now become normal.
Yes.
That red flag. So, but I just wanted to highlight that we've normalized red flags, and that's a big problem.
It's a massive problem. When we're sitting in meetings and we're saying we're going to drop the word crisis because this is business as usual, not business unusual.
Yes.
We're so used to being in the crisis.
Yes.
And it's interesting talking about crisis. The National Logistics Crisis Committee that's being set up is coming to the end of its life now because the discussion is the crisis is over. I'm like, okay, maybe we just got desensitized to it, like you said.
Thank you.
But at the same time, what we have to do is we have to do the difficult things.
Yeah.
And so when we have got a crisis, and there's an old adage in business, don't let a good crisis go to waste. Because the only time you can shock people out of their current way is to have a crisis that means, well, okay, whatever pain we have to do to change ways, let's do that because we don't like this outcome, we need another outcome. And so, unfortunately, it's easier to do what I did today, and sometimes there needs to be a smack for you to realize, change direction. And so that's it. It is a crisis. It has become desensitized. I think the whole of South Africa, if you talk about crime, if you talk about the condition of our streets, if you talk about stuff not working, I come up to Joburg and I see traffic signals not working, like, guys, that's economic sabotage.
Yeah.
You're just killing all the people who need to go to work. slowing them down. For what value add?
Yeah. And I want us to get to one of the articles you've written or you wrote, or it was your LinkedIn post around how we're going to grow the economy to between 8% and something. And obviously you're punting your solution to say, this is the way to go, South Africa. How are we know that transport is really plays a critical role in the economy of South Africa. And these inefficiencies that you have mentioned have contributed to why the country is not doing well at all. And you are saying that I've got the solution, guys. If we want to grow at this rate, this is what we need to do. Please share.
Okay, so I think, let me, if I can clarify, is that I wish there was a silver bullet. I wish there was a solution that would get us to economic growth of whatever it is, or a supply chain that works. Unfortunately, the supply chain is literally that. It's a supply chain, a chain, which means you're only as strong as your weakest link. And I know this is all, sort of said often, but it's true. Which is different to most things. So we actually have to look at this systematically. So you have to repeat the question. I've just gonna totally vibrated. I'm like, what was the question again?
It's all right. I'm asking that now. I've also forgotten it, but I'll remember it. It was about the economy, the growth of our economy. That you are suggesting that for us to grow, the economy, this is something that we have to think about, and your solution is what we need to execute.
100%. So mine is part of the solution. Maybe it's part of the solution. What we have to then do is understand that any single good that we have, and let's say a can of Coke, roughly 50% of that cost is taken up in transport.
Yes.
The raw material to the place where it gets manufactured, the can itself, then the box it comes in, then the plastic sheet it goes around in. So if you add up every single one of those costs, roughly 50%. Now, we have a very inefficient supply chain. We had a big issue with our VAT increase almost getting put up in February of this year, and that was a big discussion. Now, if we can improve our supply chain, which means that 10%, that means we bring out every single good down 5% in cost.
Yeah.
We have deflation of 5%. We don't have to go put a VAT increase through, because all of a sudden our goods have become better priced. We can now afford more. Making the system better and more efficient, there's no downside for it. All there is upside with regards to, guys, we're getting goods at a cheaper price. We're moving it more efficiently, which means we're not burning coal or diesel. We're not damaging our roads. Everything is working in the way it's supposed to. So it's quite a macro answer, but it talks to, we need to be more efficient. The direct consequence of that are our stuff costs less, which means we have inflation coming down, which is positive. And if inflation comes down, the Reserve Bank can put interest rates further down, and interest rates further down creates companies to spend. So what we have is a business, and logistics is part of the circular economy.
Yes.
Everything is related and interacted, and we need to get better at the various things. And each better one we get at improves the rest of it. Now, what we have in the issue is, why you asked why hasn't it been done before in the past, is the problem is it requires multiple parties, multiple government entities, and we don't like working together.
No, I've learned that every department has its own mandate.
I will not comment on that.
Apparently, every department has its own mandate. But in what you have said around, it's a supply chain, and you are only as strong as your weakest. Within the chain. A lot of transporters, small and medium enterprises, are not aware that they are part of supply chain.
Okay.
And how that impacts their business, coming to the costs of, or not even the costs, the rates that they will be given, or the rates that they have to negotiate of transporting the goods. So I would like you to break down supply chain for layman terms, for a transporter, to say, you are coming at this point of this supply chain. These are the different elements that actually contribute to whether you're going to get a suitable rate or not a suitable rate. And the challenges that you're actually facing is because certain parts of our supply chain are being impacted in a particular way, or inflation is affecting them in a particular way. Yes.
Okay, so I think that the supply chain to the SME is difficult because they are a price taker. They are not a
Yes.
price maker. And when you're a commodity, which is what they are seen as in the supply chain, is you're not one of the decision makers, influencers, etc. You are plugged in like a brick into a wall,
Yes.
as opposed to the architect, which decides where it goes. So that's the first difficulty. If I'm setting the scene.
Yes.
So you must understand what game you're playing. And if you're playing soccer, understand that what you are. And if you're the water boy, lacquer. You're not going to run into the field unless the whistle's blown and the guys allow you on. Whereas if you're a soccer player, you play differently. So firstly, understand your role. And what it is, whatever that is.
And where you are.
And where you are, and be realistic with it. Because I keep telling this as an example. If you think about a watch, an old watch where they have gears. If one gear believes it's 5% bigger than it actually is, it doesn't mesh perfectly.
Yeah.
It misses the rungs. And so what we need to do is, in the supply chain, everything needs to fit in perfectly, which means we have to be accurate, first with ourselves, and then outside of that. Now, the issue that we have in this country is we have made very long supply chains. The very long supply chain goes right from source, and let's use the mines example.
Yes.
So from pit to port. That's very easy when it's one commodity, one mine, one transporter, Transnet in both sides. This becomes very, very complex when you've got many different role players up in
Yes.
Gauteng, for example, in the container corridor, who then, no one has enough volumes to fill up a train, so you have to amalgamate all the trains. Then you have to bring it down. Then there's pinch points. What happens if the rail's been damaged? There's been some stolen. What happens if there's a backup in the port? What happens if it's windbound? What happens? And like I said, any one of those links then becomes damaged or hot or whatever the reference we'd like to use. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
So the model that we are advocating at Catteridge, or the inland port model that MIPA advocates, Catteridge advocates, and is internationally best practice that we've seen, is that you break the supply chain down into smaller chains that interact with each other, but are not dependent on each other. They're interdependent, but not dependent, which means that in the example of, and let's use Gauteng once again down to Catteridge, the train comes down to Catteridge. That's where it takes off all its containers. It loads up its next set of containers and goes back to Gauteng. That's all it does. It doesn't have to rely on going through the congested port area, through into the port, waiting for the boats. What happens if the boat's delayed? For whatever reason, we know about Hamas, we know about the issues that are happening with pirates, etc. These things happen.
Yeah.
So, we have to keep the boat as busy as possible because that's expensive, then the port, then the rail, and then the terminals and trucks. And so if you follow that transport hierarchy, which is quite important, which we don't think about in this country.
No, yeah.
I'm the hierarchy.
Yes.
My cargo, I'm going first.
Yes.
No, guys, if you think about transport hierarchy and you work to what is the most expensive asset has to be utilized the most.
Yes.
In South Africa's case, it's the port. The port needs to be the most efficient. That's the driver. Then the next one down, hierarchy, is train. The next one down is truck. And if you look after those and those interests, you will get a good outcome. It's a bit, yeah.
And we've had it the other way around for some time.
Yes.
So
we often put upside down.
Yeah, we've had it the other way, around. And that's why you're finding a lot of transporters crying around wear and tear of their vehicles, etc., because a lot of our transportation has been heavily reliant on the transporter.
Yes.
And rail for some time was not really functioning at the rate that it has to function. And you were saying it's very important that we remember that the ship is very expensive. It's more expensive than the rail. The rail is more expensive than the truck. And we need to understand that hierarchy and get them working independently but interdependently.
Correct. So that's just the various components.
Yes.
But now we talk about the actual supply chain, the actual, where does it terminate, where does it stop?
Yes.
And sort of the construct is now, guys, what we need to do is we need to have stockyards or buffers in the supply chain outside of the most expensive area, which is the port area, guys. At the moment, that port area is used as the stockyard, as the truck stop, as everything, and this is where the congestion now comes on. It is ludicrous. Your most expensive asset, you're clogging up with your cheapest mode of transport. This is not a good system.
Make sense.
Let's change the system.
I'm so glad that you're breaking this down. I'm also learning so much. I'm learning so much because there's if you're not in the business, for somebody like myself, and also for other people that are in the business, but they don't understand or were never really taught as to how important the ports are and how expensive, how it is your biggest asset. And if you're not running it correctly, how it affects everything. And for us to rethink it. You mentioned that transporters are price takers, and the smaller you are, the more of a desperate price taker you become. Now, with the change and the transition in the industry, how do I now move to play and become a big guy? Where is the opportunity for me? We touched on it earlier. You talked about last mile. But in my view, there's still going to be very high competition in the last mile because most people are going to run there.
Yes. So agreed, they are going to run there. However, what was your competitive advantage before?
But there isn't a competitive advantage for me as a transporter, Mr. Lord.
Okay.
All I'm doing, and this is the reality, and I want us to break it down.
Yeah.
If I have 5 trucks and Tabiso have 5 trucks, right? What we are doing is just making sure that we are getting the cargo to where it needs to be on time, hopefully, right?
Yes.
So I can't say to you, my value proposition is that I'm going to get there 5 minutes before, somebody else, etc., etc. Most of small and medium enterprises, really what it is their value proposition is trying to get your cargo there on time. They don't have the necessary capability to now do the other things like distribution, warehousing, etc. So that is what it is that I wanted you also to remember, that a lot of them, they're not thinking about a value proposition in a way that you might perhaps be thinking about it, and that could add to their client.
Okay. Now, I understood and agreed with you that they are price takers and have to have but it's still, you have, what is your business? How do you go about getting business? So there would be pricing. And so let's say their main competition is pricing. Great, guys. How do you bring pricing down? You make your truck move more efficiently, i.e. underload more, and you have loads both ways. Now, that's very difficult to do as a small individual. And most clients saying, I want container from A to B. They don't say what's coming back from B to A. That's your issue. So if you can now start getting the volumes that these inland ports bring, you start now having the opportunity to have full loads both ways each side. And so you start having a more lean operation, which means you make more profit because you get income from both legs.
Yeah.
You've still got the same cost regardless, maybe a little bit more dropping off the second container or whatever you're carrying. But you need to start thinking about efficiency of the supply chain. What does our client want? He wants his container or his cargo delivered on time, every time, and at the right price, with as limited risk as possible. How are you addressing that in your business at the moment? And are you doing it badly or well? How can we do it if you start augmenting some of your services with third-party services? And at the moment, we've only discussed train service. However, if you'd like, warehouse space, and you'd like it short-term for your cargo needs, great. Come speak to the inland port operators, because our holy grail is the buildings that we'd like to create, these logistics facilities around. And what we've done is we've gone about creating these inland ports as the port is the reason people want to be there. But our economic value add comes from putting up the facilities around these inland ports. And so what we're looking for is exactly the same sort of business your SME clients would need. Obviously, you're going to pay slightly more on a per day basis because you're not taking a 10-year lease or whatever the case is, but at least it allows you to play. I got regaled this story a little while ago, and I have shared it before, but I think it's important for this conversation, in that a transporter transporting significant amounts of one of the biggest retailers in the country was asked a question. And the question was very simply, how are you going to increase my business to the transporter? I'm going between 8 and 12%, or 8 and 13%. That's the expectation for the next 5 years per year. How are you going to grow to accommodate me without adding another truck to the road?
Sure. So they stood back a bit.
Well, no, they're saying our philosophy is to be greener. We can force that issue by how we procure. And what we can't do is just keep adding more trucks and expect an improved result. It's diminishing values at the moment. You put another truck on, you only get half of what you did before. You put another truck on, you're only getting 10%. This becomes a very expensive asset you add in. And so what you have to do is start thinking like a transporter. Go back to the cash business. Go, are you making money at the end? And then use your entrepreneurial flair to go, I saw a gap to get trucks, and maybe I just had some money I inherited. Maybe that was the gap, whatever the gap is.
It was just an opportunity. Somebody said, come transport this.
But you have to pivot, because there's a lot of these side tippers sitting around. I hear thousands of them sitting around when the coal price came off. Everyone bought cold trucks in order sites. So those are great, guys, but we have to think sustainably when it comes to supply chains. A lot of guys think opportunistically, great, and there's opportunity for that. But if you're not thinking about how my kids are going to be doing this and make it more efficiently as a thought process.
Sustainability is very important.
Yes, but real sustainability.
Yes. Let's break down the inland ports.
Okay.
What's in the inland ports?
Okay, I'm going to explain something, and it's analogy again,
Yes.
which I thought was brilliant, and it got explained to me. I won't share his name, but it's someone I respect in the industry, a professor. And he said to me, when we were focused, and I'm a property developer by background, and so unfortunately every problem's a nail because you're a hammer.
Yes.
And so originally when we came to start putting the inland port together, realizing that it actually needs to be developed conceptually as well as physically, we started putting a lot of effort in and around the warehouses and the road infrastructure and all the stuff that property developers would normally do. And this gentleman turned around to me and goes, Warwick, you are a residential golf estate developer without a golf course. So I want to put up the houses around in a golf estate, but you need a golf course to put up these houses around. And if it's an amazing golf course, you put up super expensive houses. If it's a very bad golf course, you put up very cheap houses. And that's the analogy. And so when he explained this to me, and he's a logistics guy and I'm an idiot property guy by background, it was like a light bulb moment, a serious aha. You need to have the reason for all these other assets to come about. And the problem is everyone wants to create these golf courses, these inland ports, for their own best cargo movements. And everyone is selfish with regards to that. It needs someone who doesn't have cargo movements.
For you to think differently.
Well, to think globally, holistically, and going, but it's not very efficient. Why are we doing it this way? Why are we running a full train that way with a client? And they're happy to pay for it back when we actually could get a client in the port to come back the other way. Guys, think about how we're sucking costs out the system, not how I can make more revenue out of my clients. And to me, this is the sort of...
That's a pause moment, eh?
Okay.
Because I think a lot of people that would want to, like what you've mentioned, that they want to get into building their own, they're thinking about increasing revenue.
Yes.
And that in itself has a dead end at some point. Instead of, and you're saying stop thinking about milking your client as much as possible. As much as that's good, but you need to step back and have a different view as to what services actually you can further provide.
100%. But if you think about what's their biggest competition, they're competing on price.
Yes.
So let's say it's all 10 Rand. Great. How do you make more money to make more fleet? Bring down your costs. If you can move your costs from 9 Rand down to 6 Rand, hey, instead of making 1 Rand, I'm making 4 Rand. That's 400% more, 4 times more. This is fundamentally changing. And this is the discussion that I'm beating my drum about, saying, guys, look at how much transport costs are in every single good you buy. Imagine we made that more efficient. We would have deflation for a little bit. That's unheard of in this country. It's fundamentally unheard. I mean, the Reserve Bank would be very happy with that.
But I don't think they will hear you. Yeah.
But it's a journey.
Yes.
So with all of these things, the government now understands that the current model is unsustainable. The road damage is too big. What we're trying to do is run a race, literally jumping on one leg. Let's rather use both legs. Let's use the rail the way it's supposed to. Let's use the road it's supposed to. And then let's have a better outcome. One where we bring down costs and move forward.
Yeah, my mind is going through so many thoughts about inlet ports, about transporters, about the inefficiencies in our supply chain, and obviously the opportunities for small and medium enterprises, because what often happens is they so down the chain that they only get to enjoy the crumbs of what could potentially be given to them. And if one is not going to be agile now, indeed, this is going to be a threat for their business, and they will sooner or later fold their business. Where do they go? Can they come to you for some advice, for some support? I know you want their business. Or where do they go? How do they partner with you?
So I think that's you phrased it exactly right. How do you partner with us? And what we say, and what I'd like to refer to is, we're on a journey. And if you think about those caravans that used to journey, where you've got everyone in there, you don't own those people in there. You would walking a path together.
Yes.
And in that, you get the guys who look after the oxen at that stage, the guys who can cook, the guys that can maybe do music, and all of them create this enjoyable journey. And so what we're saying to them is, who wants to partner us in this journey? We are going in this direction. The more people that join our caravan, the better it becomes. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. An orchestra with 2 people in, and with an orchestra with 100 people in, is a very different sound. And that's the same with an inland port. And so what we're encouraging, and what I'm really trying to say is, guys, come along. Come have a look at what we're doing and what the inland ports are doing in whatever shape, way, or form. And then come and say how you can make it better. And you actually have to do that. And what we're finding is a lot of traction now with individuals that are, it's like aha moments, because everyone wants to have, no, where's the contract?
Yes.
Where's this? Guys, you keep jumping to the outcome. The outcome will be the outcome. The journey is the critical thing, because the outcome will be based on what we learn along the way, where we get to. And I mean, I never thought I'd be moving trains. I'm a chartered accountant who became a property developer who thought that that's where you'd stay. And then tripped and became into logistics and inland ports, and just had a look at it from maybe a different lens. Because there's no way, I've never seen supply chain getting done before in a big company. And this is the way, let's say, Maersk do it, or MSC do it, or whatever the case is. It's going, it doesn't look very efficient.
Yeah.
And I understand this, because my biggest issue, and this is just maybe an aside, is if I could wave a magic wand and everyone could get their goods from the port in containers via trucks in 1 hour, there would be people who would fight it, transporters. Why? Because currently, if it takes 4 hours, it takes them 3 hours 45.
Yeah.
Their competitive advantage is that 15 minutes earlier than anyone else. So they don't want the whole system to come down to 1 hour only, because it erodes their value proposition. And this is what I really battle with when we've got an SA Inc. discussion going on. We can see it's not working. We can see our costs are too high. We can see so many things. We have to go think a little bigger. And what's good for the country can also be very good for me.
But not a lot of people think like that. And that's why it will always be a challenge to get people to think differently. As some people really still want to exploit the inefficiencies because it's working for them and they're making money. Like for the example that you've made around the 15-minute difference, instead of an hour, they will still just want to make a 15-minute difference. And that is, I think, one of the biggest challenges is the mindsets of the people within the industry to think different and for them to start adapting to new ways of doing things instead of trying to keep on exploiting certain inefficiencies for increased revenue, which is not good for the country. And it brings me to my next point, as we're going to bring the conversation to a close, around good business citizenship for the country.
Yes.
Right. And it's something that, for me, I think oftentimes when you are an entrepreneur and you are in it and you're faced with your own challenges, you don't sit back and ask yourself, is this good for the economy of South Africa, or is it just good for my own business? Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so my thoughts are, what we've done, and this is worldwide, not just South Africa or Africa, is that our highest goal, or our biggest, what we're trying to achieve, is wrong. And the biggest goal that we're trying to achieve in business is to make more money or to be bigger than your competitor. Now, to me, those are consumption discussions as opposed to creation discussions. Like, what are we creating? What are we building? What are we making better than is currently here? So I found that, and in South Africa's been accelerating in this regard, is what's in it for me?
Yes.
How am I taking? And when you've got that, if that's your ultimate goal, is I want to have the most money or be the most powerful, that's okay, that's your goal, but that's not a building goal. That's a I goal, and you tend to alienate people. And what I'd love to do is I'd love people's focus to be more on, let's create something amazing, or just create something, and let's see how we're going to do that. Instead of thinking about who's going to do that portion? Because that's the most lucrative.
Yes.
Guys, let's decide that we're going to play soccer. Put the best soccer team together. And if we're successful, it'll be amazing for all of us.
Yeah, you and I are very ideal because people are very competitive out there.
But competitive wrongly. You know, look at soccer players. They're very competitive inside their structures. Now, being competitive by cheating, that's not being competitive.
No, that's not,
And that's what I believe that our economic system is being rewards bad behavior.
Yes.
And that's not a good place to be.
And
like our port system rewards bad behavior. And what we're saying is, are you grown up enough to not go along that bad behavior because you can? Because I want to leave a place for my children and my children's children. And this is the only country we got. So let's make it lekker.
Yo, you've made me think. And because I have a lot of conversations with small and medium enterprises, and a lot of small truckers, really, they have pinned their livelihoods on their trucks and the business and the industry. And it's very difficult sometimes for them to step out and think about the sustainability of the industry, and also whether what they are currently building is still going to be around in the next 5 years or 10 years. And it requires a lot of mind shift, which I don't think we are ready for. And I'm glad we're having these conversations, because why I'm saying that is it's very, when somebody has completely given their life in building something, and they quickly have to now start shifting their mindsets around the sustainability of this thing that they have built, and relook at the ways in which they have built it. It takes some time for them to say, oh, this might not work in the next 5 years. Let me, shift and focus on other things. And what are your thoughts on that?
So no one said life's going to be easy. And if you think it's going to be fair, that's not life. Didn't promise you that either. What my answer to that is, the quicker you can get your mind right, and it's your mind right, never mind your mindset, your mind right, the quicker you'll reap the benefits. And I'll use an analogy again. You'll see I like analogies. I don't know if you've ever tried to saw through something with a blunt saw, or alternatively a blunt knife. Maybe a very blunt knife.
No, it's very difficult.
Well, you just slide along. You almost sort of start burning it. You're going through. Now, that's what the guys are currently doing in their business. They've got a very blunt knife, and they're trying to cut through something. And they're going, but look how hard I'm working. You're working very hard, very, very hard, ineffectively, inefficiently, and you're hurting yourself and your tools. What you need to do is step back, sharpen the knife, and then apply it to your job. Because then you go 1, 2, and you're through, or whatever the case. And what I'm trying to say is, guys, this is not rocket science.
No, it isn't.
But you have to let this penny drop, because if it doesn't drop,
yes,
you're going to keep going faster and faster and going, but I'm in the woods.
And I was told that it's how it's supposed to be.
No.
This conversation is going back to unpacking the inefficiencies that have trained and educated people to do business in a particular way.
Yes.
And we are saying, no, it is actually not supposed to have been done that way anyway. And going back to your points around how Transnet was burdened with things that Transnet ought not to be burdened with. And now with this conversation, and it's going to grow, because we cannot deny the fact that we have to get a lot of, we must move from road to rail. And we're saying to people, the way in which you've been operating, it was not necessarily like your analogy earlier, you've been operating on one leg. And it's not necessarily supposed to be done like that.
There's a better way.
There's a better way of doing it, and people need to reconfigure. And I can tell you now, a lot of people, it's a big shock. And a big shock to their system, because it's literally going to get people to start having to rethink how they've been running their businesses, and perhaps how inaccurately they've been running it. Without even being aware of the heavy costs of inefficiencies they've been carrying.
The problem is the knife started sharp. It started sharp. Their process, what they did, started correct. However, through the use and not refining, not resharpening your knife, it is now ineffective. And so to
So
me,
the deregulation was a bad decision. That's what I'm hearing.
no, well, no. So yes,
To some
you
extent.
can't create vacuums. Now that's what
Yes.
was created. So you had a very, very heavy regulated transport sector, and then you take it away. So the vacuum was filled. If you think about why do we have so many minibus taxis here?
Yes.
You know that we're one of the few countries in the world that don't subsidize our public transport, our minibus taxis.
Yeah.
So we might get upset by them cutting us off, but they're doing a service not on our dime,
Yes.
on their own dime. They've made it economically viable. So, yeah, what I've another analogy, and you can see I talk in pictures, in that the problem that we do, and we do this in our minds on many things, but let's keep it to business at the moment, is if you think about your mind as a felt, and let's say it's 100 meter by 100 meter felt, South African felt, long grass. And when the animals, I don't know if you've been in the bush, you've seen those animal paths. We've got destinations from point A to wherever it is, and some of those are sort of lined with gold. They've been walked so well. What we now need to do is we need to go bundu bashing, create new paths. These are difficult, but the more you do it, the path gets worn down and trodden down, and then that new way becomes your highway, or the correct way. And this is a mind map that I sort of use often, is going, I keep going back to the wrong places because it's convenient, it's easy, it's well-worn path. My challenge to your listeners, as well as to you, as well as to me, is going, guys, jump out of the comfortable. It hasn't worked for you anyway. You're telling me your transporting company's this, and you're saying, but you keep walking the comfortable path to this uncomfortable destination. It's not very clever. I don't understand. It doesn't make sense. Let's rather do something that makes sense. Even if you try something totally different and it's wrong, well, at least you're not hitting your head against a brick wall. You know that there's a brick wall. Stop doing that one. At least try, maybe this is a wooden wall, or it's a paper wall, or whatever the case is.
And this is going to be the last one, I hope. I just thought about cross-border.
Okay.
Right. The ones that are going into SADC, I don't think you've started operations that side as yet.
We have got a MIPA associate there, though.
Okay.
From Messina Intermodal.
For Messina. Oh. What is the solutions around the congestions on the borders, just from your views, and also the lack of proper transport infrastructure? Is it from truck stops? Is it the roads? And I say this because there's a lot of talk around the Africa Free Trade Agreement that's going to boost the economy and boost Africa trade. But yet we're still embedded with a lot of challenges outside South Africa, just into just SADC, not even thinking about going Middle Africa or East. What are your thoughts?
So my thoughts are, it's once again, we come back to systematic inefficiencies, the way the system is geared up at the moment. Now, especially when we start going cross borders, we now have complications. At least in the ports, it's only a South African issue. Whereas at our borders, it's a South African and whichever our neighbor is issue. Now, there has been infrastructure put in. However, roads have been upgraded and various things. However, once again, our supply chain is not designed or geared up effectively at the moment. It's geared up when we were doing 10. We're now doing 10,000.
Yeah.
And so what we're all trying to do is, let's say there were 100 people in this room and there's a fire alarm. It's all of us trying to run out the door at the same time.
At the same time.
Guys, if you can orchestrate all 100 people to line up, the faster that they can line up, the faster they can get out. But if we all try and go through that door at the same time, we're never going to make it. So we have no system in our supply chain system, no oversight. We've also got no clear digital overlay, which means we're not seeing stuff in real time where stuff is. So we can't we don't know what's happening, and we're now starting to get reports on what's happening. We're starting to think about getting predictive. Now, when you start getting predictive, you start becoming quite a lot cleverer, because that's a terrible word, more clever in that.
Cleverer.
Cleverer. My English is good, delicious. So instead of then going, that there's a 2-hour delay at this border post, yet if I add a 45-minute round trip, I can go through that border post and I save an hour and 15 minutes. If you can start using those analytics to disperse load. All we have to do is disperse load. It's like everything trying to get through one doorway at the same time. Now, unfortunately, the inland
port,
when you cross over borders,
yes,
where the borders are, is that it's got two parties. And often there's one-upmanship, and often there isn't. I keep talking. I spoke earlier about what's your ultimate goal. The ultimate goal of those entities, whether they're states or the actual officials implementing it, is not to have cargo move as efficiently as possible. Theirs is, if it's the gangsters around there, which there are, is to extort as much as possible. If it's a policeman, maybe not to get shot by these gangsters. That's your main goal. So what I'm finding is that, what we used to do historically as a world is we used to have a goal and we used to go after it.
Yeah.
If you think America's putting a man on the moon, everyone was working on putting it. And when I just use an analogy, and I love this analogy again, the president at that side, John F. Kennedy, used to love going up to like the street cleaner or the sweeper or something like that. And he was in where the spaceship was getting built, and he goes up to the sweeper there, and he goes, "And sir, what is it that you do?" And the sweeper looks up and goes, "I'm putting a man on the moon, sir."
Yeah.
And when you start buying into that higher goal, that objective, and you start putting all your effort towards that, you get an amazing outcome. True. The problem is we are soccer players, all with different goals, trying to score in different places. And that's
trying to make a living.
Well, no, at the expense of someone else.
Yes.
If the whole soccer team plays together, it's a much better living.
We've been programmed incorrectly to some extent due to the challenges of our country. This one is my last one, Mr. Lord. The preference of the Mozambique port and Namibia by various transporters or players in the space, has it been because of the inefficiencies of the Durban port and the Cape Town port?
I think that the simple answer is yes. The more nuanced or complex answer is someone else can only eat your lunch if they are putting forward, at the table, so to speak. And so they've definitely upped their game. But at the same time, and everyone, the question's been raised before, and I say 100%, but it's still a mouse against an elephant. So a mouse can double in size or 10 times in size and be the size of a rat or a cat.
Yeah.
We're still talking about an elephant in the Durban port. And so what a lot of it gets missed in the media, or at least my reading out of the media, is that it looks like it's a fair comparison, that it's it's All Blacks versus South Africa. No, guys, it's South Africa versus Georgia. If we use the rugby analogy and saying, if you understand that 100%, and they might become, Wales or England or New Zealand
over
in time. And we must encourage that, because what we need to do is we need to move cargo efficiently and effectively in and out.
Yeah.
Now, the problem with those two ports from a South African perspective is they add a border post in between, which adds another wrinkle or another layer and complexity and risk, because things can stop there. And so my personal viewpoint is, guys, it's like inland ports. The more we have, the better. The more ports we have for cargo to go out, the better. Sure, there will be some losers. And the ones where we don't send cargo to will have to close down and they'll lose money. But at this stage of where we are, South Africa, the more the better.
The more the better. Thank you so much. What I have, one of my takeouts in this conversation is, as a small and medium player, or an SME in the space, rather, let me use that term, I should see you as a partner.
Yes. To
create more value for my client and for me to stay in this business. So there is an opportunity you're providing as inland ports to partner with small and medium enterprises to provide better value for their clients. And that's how they will remain in business. Am I correct with my takeout?
Correct, except it's a bit of a bold statement to say if they do that, they'll remain in business. I don't believe in absolutes like that, unfortunately.
I'm being optimistic.
It's your best shot.
It's your best shot. Yes, guys, it's your best shot, because why I said it like that, I know a lot of people are not going to pack up and put away their businesses, and, they're still going to want to stay within the industry and try to find means and ways to become relevant in the space. But here's an alternative. It is a threat, but it's a threat that you can work with and make it an opportunity. Yes. Any last words from you?
Just last words are, this is our country. Let's roll up our sleeves. Any of your SME viewers, guys, we need all of you. You guys are the engine room of South Africa. You are the job creation. You do the employment. And so, if you are finding it difficult, please do reach out, and I'm sure my contact details will be put around.
Them up,
But also, life is hard. South Africa is hard, and it's always darkest just before the dawn. And I really believe that where we are at the moment, poised with some of the boulders moving and the green flags that I spoke about earlier, that I'm seeing on the big picture, we have a huge opportunity at the moment. And if we all grab it, it'll happen. It will become a reality. And if we don't, and we sit back and wait for someone else to do it, well, then it'll pass us by and it won't happen at all. So the big encouragement is roll up your sleeves, keep doing what you're doing. And if you're really about to throw in the towel, please just come and chat to us, come and have these sort of podcast discussions, because we're in this together, and let's build something.
No, that's great. Mr. Lord is by far one of the most patriotic South African I've ever had to sit with. That's in South Africa, and that's very optimistic of the challenges that we are facing and the potential of this country if we just get our supply chain correct. And everybody can have a space to play, and also make sure that everybody's playing nicely within the game with each other. And with that, I think we'll bring it to a wrap. I encourage you to follow him on LinkedIn and follow the work that they are doing, the conversations that they are having, so that you can hedge yourself in the future and you do not stay behind. Thank you. See you next time.